right, so this evening we're going to talk about sleep, and I am going to do something a little bit different. I have kind of an outline that I'm going to follow, and I'm of course going to talk about the Ayurvedic clock, which is hiding underneath there. But first of all, if you want to check out any of the other stuff that's been going on, whenshifthappens.org is my website. And then I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, and then YouTube is When Shift Happens also. So you can check me out. I've got a lot of things that are coming up in the next few months and a lot of cool additions to my practice that I wasn't expecting, but I feel very, very excited about it. I'll let you guys know in a little while. So I haven't completely committed, but I'm not ready to tell everybody what I'm doing yet. But I'm really excited about it because it's a great addition to the practices that I do and some of the other ideas that I have for future practices. But anyway, so we will uncover the Ayurvedic clock. So if you don't have this down, I'd highly recommend drawing the clock and putting the designated areas, 6 p.m., 10 p.m., midnight, 2 a.m., 6 a.m., 10 a.m., noon, 2 p.m. And then the different areas are designated for different reasons. So we have certain energies that are at certain times of the day, and this is what kind of represents that. And I've given them a little bit different names because Vata usually means that which moves things, Pitta means that which digests things, and Kapha means that which holds things together. But I'll tell you why a little bit later, why I put the names that I did there, because it'll have to do with sleep and with other things that we do during the day and during our life that plays an impact in these particular sections of our day. All right, so first I'm going to talk about what's keeping you up. So often we think that our lack of sleep is because we're exhausted. And in most cases, it's not because we're too exhausted. It's actually because we don't have enough energy to go to sleep. So we look at sleep as something we should just be able to wind down and be able to go to sleep. But if we're so amped up, meaning if our cortisol levels are super, super high, we might be exhausted, meaning we don't have a lot of energy. But at the same time, we have this hormone that's amping us up even more for fight or flight. So I talk about this a lot in the stress lectures that I teach, and they're online, and I'll be doing another one again this month. And I talk about how our stress, our cortisol levels play a huge part in affecting pretty much every aspect of our life. And we need cortisol. Cortisol helps us to be able to be alert, to be awake, to wake us up. But when we're trying to wind down at night, it's the last thing we want in our system because it's what is going to keep us from sleeping. It shuts off melatonin. So the yin and the yang, melatonin, cortisol, completely opposite ends of the spectrum. They have completely opposite duties at completely opposite times of the day. So we have the melatonin, which in Western, we talk about it putting us to sleep, but actually what it does is it recalibrates our system so that we are changing shift workers. So we're shifting from our senses and our perceptions of the daylight to our digestion of the senses at night. And I'll break that down in a little bit. So we want to think of not being able to sleep or having difficulty sleeping more so with extreme exhaustion than just the fact that we're amped up, because we're really not amped up. We're probably just really fatigued, maybe adrenal fatigue, maybe some sort of other fatigue. But that plays a huge part on whether or not we're going to sleep or stay asleep or be able to even wind down at night. And then what we end up doing, right, is if we can't sleep, we grab a device or something like that and then stimulate ourselves even more and then stop the possibility of melatonin production, which is going against the circadian clock. Our body needs energy to be able to settle down. So in Ayurveda, we look at not using sedatives, but using more adaptogens. And I'll talk about the adaptogens in a little bit, the herbs that we use. And we use these adaptogen or adaptogenic practices because we want our body to be able to have energy during the day and be able to rest and recover at night. And sedatives, what they can do, and especially if they're drug type sedatives, is they may help us fall asleep and they may be a sedative to our our cognitive function, but at the same time, the side effects are pretty staggering. And I'm not even going to go into that tonight because it's a very controversial thing. But there's plenty of research that supports the fact that drugs are drugs, and their effects over a period of time are pretty significant. And if you're taking them every single night, it's going to damage things much quicker than if it's just once in a great while, or if you can adapt other practices. So there's a lot to be said around that, which I'm not going to go into today. It's not one of my topics that I'm going to discuss. But I'm going to go into a little bit deeper of rejuvenation. So in Ayurveda, we look at rejuvenation. So we look at the exhaustion portion due to the lack of stress reduction and too much cortisol in our system. So we do a lot of practices that help our body to be able to rejuvenate and build up. And that's why we recommend certain herbs like Brahmi or Bacopa or ashwagandha. And ashwagandha is hands down the most beautiful herb that the big man upstairs created, that nature created, because it's adaptogenic, meaning it can give us energy. It can help sedate us to an extent, but not the same way as a sedative does. It helps build our system. So it builds pretty much every system in our body, or the major systems. It helps for digestion, helps for reproduction. That's what it was initially used for, was male reproduction. But we're finding out so much about it because the herb is very, very well researched, which is very exciting for us Ayurvedic practitioners, because it's our go-to, because it's easy and there's really no side effects. Like it doesn't interact with other medications. Like it doesn't have any of those, well, we might not want to do this, like some of the other resins or some of the other a little bit harsher herbs or stripping herbs. This one's just very building in our body, and not building in that way that estrogen builds in our body. It's more of the building of our body to be able to support it, to give us rest when we need rest, and to give us energy when we need energy. So it's really the perfect herb. The idea of it at adaptogens is they don't stimulate and they don't sedate. So they're not designed to be able to do that. They're designed to be able to restore and to rejuvenate, to really bring balance into our systems. So talking a little bit about sleep types. So there's different kinds of sleep types. Kaphas, we won't even talk about that, because Kapha sleep type, they don't have any problem sleeping. They sleep very deep. They don't have issues. If anything, they sleep too much. So they tend to sleep further into the morning, which is not good for their constitution, because that's the time of day when they need to be getting up a little bit before to move that kapha energy out of their system. So kaphas usually don't have problems sleeping, but the two that do are pitta, and pittas have problems falling asleep. And this is usually because if you look at this time of night, it's the pitta time of night. If a pitta stays up past 10, or especially 10:30, they get the second wind. And that second wind activates the brain versus activating detoxification. So we want to make sure that we are going to sleep before 10 o'clock, because that will help our mind and everything wind back down. And it takes time to be able to, again, get to this point, because if we've been amped up all day, and then pittas usually like to work at night, because it's usually the time where they can focus, when they can really engage, or they didn't get enough done during the day and they just think they have to work because they're workaholics. It's just a tendency. And so those start to get themselves amped up beyond on devices, which block melatonin production. So their body isn't getting that time to be able to wind down and be able to settle into or self-sedate, versus taking some sort of drug or even an herb to be able to go to sleep or to wind down. This is when at night, during this time of night, our body detoxifies. So I've talked about that many times. This is the time when our liver becomes more active. And that's why it's connected to pitta, because pitta, it has to do with our liver, it has to do with the function of our liver, whether it be the bile that it creates to be able to digest food, or the detoxification process that it does to be able to pull toxins out of our system and hopefully get it out of our system via the bile, but a lot of times gets recirculated. So if we do not get sleep during this time, what happens is our body can get a little bit confused and start putting the toxins back into our system. And this is why aging is an issue. A lot of people age faster if they are not getting proper sleep. And we really need to be able to get that proper sleep to be able to detoxify at the cellular level. Let's see. So Vata state, or Vata type of sleep issues, is when you wake up during the Vata time of night. So ironically, right? So you wake up and you lay awake. So they'll wake up about 2, 3 o'clock and have difficulties falling back asleep. Some people wake up and they go back to sleep just fine. That's not as much of an issue. We don't want our body really waking up, or getting up to go to the bathroom, because then we can again bother our melatonin production unless you keep the lights off and have, you know, very, very little interaction with light, because light does affect melatonin directly. It shuts it off. It teaches our pineal gland, say, hey, it's time to be able to get up. It's morning time. It's time to start activating our brain. So this is a key time to be able to still anchor into that sleep, because this is when our body's going to start moving the toxins out. So here we're detoxifying everything. So byproducts of digestion, byproducts of cellular level digestion, and then the toxins start to move out via vata, moving out of our system. And then we want to be able to get up in the morning to have that bowel movement, to eliminate any toxins that have been accumulated in our body. We don't want to hold on to it for the rest of the day, because it just sits there. It just sits there until it's time to be able to get it out, or you just get so constipated that you have to do something else and take some sort of supplement of some kind to be able to get it out. Some of the herbs again used for pretty much both types would be ashwagandha and brahmi. And brahmi would be highly effective for the vata types, along with ashwagandha. And then the pitta types, ashwagandha would be very effective. Brahmi's cooling though, so it's a really great herb to be able to use for both. Another thing you can try if you're having difficulty sleeping is golden milk. So golden milk is it's golden because it's got turmeric in it. Turmeric is a anti-inflammatory. It has a lot of other adaptogenic properties to a certain extent. It is a little bit heating, but not in the way that it's going to actually raise body temperature or cause too many issues, because it has a balancing effect. And then adding some ghee, some cardamom, some ginger, dates and almonds. You can also use almond milk if you don't use cow's milk. You want to try to get it as pure as possible. You can put some coconut meat or coconut flakes in there and put it in a blender and blend it up. And then heating it. So you want to make sure that you're heating this, because it needs to be a warm milk, and it's super tasty. With the dates in there, it makes it very sweet. And if it needs a little more honey, add it just before you drink it. So don't put it in there when you're cooking it, because that is honey, once it's heated, is considered carcinogenic. So we don't want to create ama in our body when we're trying to keep our body clean, to be able to digest and to be able to process and eliminate properly. Taking a hot bath or shower. So being able to take a bath or shower at night. Everybody's a little bit different when they take their cleansing shower to be able to clean off. Some people are morning and need it to wake up. In the evening, I did it in the evenings for quite a long time. I like it better in the evening because it helps my body to be able to like clean off the day and to be able to rest and go to bed clean. So I'm a big shower in the evening person. Some people are morning people. That's fine too. But then find other practices that help you wind down at night. Taking a bath at night, especially on a stressful day, will help you sleep better. So finding whatever works best. Using massage oil, so doing Abhyanga practices. A lot of time Abhyanga is done during the morning, but I found that there's ways to kind of cheat that system just a little bit. And I mean cheat very, very loosely. What I do is I take certain herbal oils and I apply them after my shower, and I just put a light layer on, and then I just know that whatever pajamas or clothes that I have on might be thrown away after a period of time. So it'll wash for a while, and then they'll just start to get kind of a greasier, heavier film to them. And that's just when you throw them away. And you can wash them in like vinegar water and stuff like that. And it helps for quite a while, but eventually you just get rid of them. So this is a way to help calm the nervous system down. You can also just apply it to the bottoms of your feet and your lower back, and then your ears and your nose. And that does help too. But doing full oiling is by far more effective, especially if you've got extreme vata or if, to help calm the mind down for pitta too, can help significantly putting the oil on. I do notice a difference when I don't shower at night, and when I do shower at night and put the oil on it, it does make a difference. So just something to think about. Being able to read a book at night. Another thing that a lot of people do when they have sleep issues is they'll just stay in bed and stay in bed and stay in bed and stay in bed and just let their mind go, 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 go. And what happens is you start associating bedtime with racing mind time, with thinking time. And there's been some research around, if you sit there, if you are laying there and your just mind keeps on going, you're supposed to get up, get out of the room, so you're not associating wake time with sleep time, and do something else. So maybe that you read a really boring book, something that grounds you or draws you down, that calms your nervous system. Meditation is really good. You're doing a yoga nidra, something like that, or, having some sort of sound. And I think people sometimes underestimate the power of sound and the power of light. So making sure that you have shades that cover, blackout shades that cover the windows, or I wear an eye bag or eye mask now, and it makes a big difference. And I'm a really good sleeper, but I'm just trying to, again, get any little extra I can to be able to sleep even better. I'm not going to do the night curtains because I do like the daylight. So when I wake up in the morning, I like to have that daylight, or that sense of daylight. It's calming for me. So I like that part of the experience versus having completely blackout lights, but blackout shades, but that's completely your choice. So you have to do what works best for you. But being able to do these practices to be able to create a better situation. So when you think about sleep, we want to take it just as seriously as we do our cooking and our diet and our nutrition, because really nothing else works very well if we're not getting the right amount of sleep. We want to be getting between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And ideally between 10 and 6 a.m. is the ideal time. Again, because of the processes that happen during these two key times are what will keep our longevity and keep us healthy during the rest of our life. So, and keep us awake and alert and digesting properly during the daytime hours. Okay, so also things, I'm going to talk about melatonin in a little bit, but being aware of your screen time. So I'd say by the time afternoon hits, you're turning your screens to the red tint screen, or not blue screen. Blue screen does have some effects on our brain, and there's some research that's coming out about it, about brain function and how it actually is harming our brains. I'm going to go a little light on the subject. You can do the research, and I'll probably have more talks about this later. But there's newer research about the brain and how it's affected by blue light, and how it's affected by too much stimulation and lights. And going into stimulation, so during the daytime, our senses are constantly taking in information. I've talked about this many times in my lectures, but we take in all the stimulation, and at night we take the time to be able to process that. So we process our stimulation, our senses, what we've touched, what we've seen, what we've heard. And this is important because if we take in a lot of really disturbing information, so a lot of high stress, a lot of disturbing news, a lot of disturbing TV watching, whether it be movies that are violent or video games that are violent, we have to process that at some time. And we process it at night in our dreams. So people with PTSD and some sort of stressor around those kind of issues, maybe some past trauma, anything that's happened can be really amplified in our dreams. The nice thing about being able to process it in our dreams is there's usually not as much emotion attached to it, because it's not in our conscious mind, it's in our subconscious mind that we digest this stuff. So we want to be able to digest our stress, detox and digest our stress at night. And this is why, again, we need to be able to get enough sleep to be able to get that process through, so we can be ready to have a stress-free day the next day. And if we're having so much stress during the day and we're not able to produce melatonin to be able to get into sleep, or to be able to let our body rest, or be able to switch systems from our daytime system to our nighttime system, then we'll find out that we're just wake up all wound up the next morning, exhausted, and it just leads into this cycle that happens over and over again. So we really want to look at, how the circadian clock works. So our daylight cycle, we want to connect with nature's natural rhythms. And all of us have the circadian clock. Yeah, every animal does. Even the nocturnal animals have the circadian clock. There's just the opposite. It's the way that they were made. They still produce melatonin at night, but their melatonin wakes up a whole different system. So our melatonin teaches our body to be able to wind down and detoxify. So stillness, it rests, it recovers, and then goes into the next day. It's the only time that our body can repair, because when we're sitting, when we're standing, when we're moving, our body cannot repair bone tissue and muscle tissue and any attachment tissue. So our tendons and ligaments can't be restored unless we're sleeping. And it's the only time that that happens, because we have to be non-weight bearing in order for our body to completely repair. And we need to be able to rest so that our body can actually heal areas that maybe are under some sort of stress or toxic or have something else going on, like an illness or disease of some kind. And that sleep is really important. It would be interesting to know the statistics around, sleep and like cancer and, certain kind of illnesses, like really, amplify, like specifically, like ask people, how much sleep are you really getting? Like, and then the quality, to understand the quality of the sleep. Are they just kind of sleeping? Or do they sleep really deeply? I would venture to believe that most people that have any sort of illnesses are not good sleepers. They probably have a lot of sleep issues and wake up exhausted the next morning, and that kind of stuff. So it would be really interesting to really go into that. And hopefully in the next few years, more research will be done around that to be able to have more information. Okay, so we'll go into some of the natural ways that you can raise your melatonin levels. So melatonin happens in our body naturally. If you take some sort of supplement of melatonin, you want to make sure that it's properly labeled, because there's not really very good regulation on it. I recommend certain kinds of melatonin because of the regulations that are the research that my teacher does around it. And I support the way he practices and the way he does things. So certain kinds of melatonin are not necessarily regulated very well. So you want to make sure you're taking a good quality melatonin, and very, very low doses. And you can always continue to amp up. You'll know when you're taking too much because you'll have lucid dreams, for one thing, and they start to get pretty intense. And then you'll start feeling tired in the morning. And it doesn't mean that the melatonin is not working. It means you're taking too much. So, and then in our culture, it's like the more the merrier. And with melatonin, it doesn't work that way. It's in Western, they talk about it being a hormone, although there's newer research that says that it's not a hormone as much as it is a molecule. This means that it acts like a hormone, but it doesn't have the side effects of a hormone, meaning if you take melatonin, it doesn't stop your body from producing melatonin, which is a really, really good thing, because melatonin has a lot of other benefits, more important than sleep. Along with reducing chances of breast cancer and stuff like that. So it's pretty fascinating research that's around melatonin, but I'll get into some of the natural ways to get melatonin. So one would be not having any artificial light 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. So before you actually go to bed. This means that artificial light would be any light. So starting to wind your house down as you start to get closer to that 10 o'clock, 10:30 time. Meaning you would take lights and start shutting down lights, and maybe even lighting candles or having just lighter or smaller lights to light things. And this helps our body to really connect with nature's rhythms. My teacher even recommends that you do a weekend detox, a light detox, where you only use nature's light, which is nice this time of year because nature's light's a little bit longer. I mean, it's getting up around 6:15-ish, 6 o'clock, there's some light now, and it goes to, well, it's 7:25. So we've still got enough light that my chickens are awake. My chickens are definitely like dialed into the circadian clock. They are the masters of it. I get out there in the morning and they are about ready to rip the door down. They're so ready to be up and out of the coop. So it's pretty funny connecting with them because they're very primitive. But we want to be able to connect to some more of that primitive stuff because we still have that primitive part of our brain that tells us that. And suprachiasmatic nucleus is the part of our brain that connects with the circadian clock. So we really want that part of our brain to be tapped in and connect with it as much as possible. And it takes time. So for those of you that have been struggling with sleep and struggling with the daylight cycle or fighting it your whole life or didn't know anything about it, that's perfectly fine too. It just takes some time, and it takes consistency, and it does take time. So be patient with yourself. Next would be getting away from LEDs. So the sun does produce blue light. It produces more blue light during the day and in the morning than it does at night. It starts to wind down at night. The blue light that the sun produces is about 25%. The blue light that the LED lights produce is about 35%. So there is significant light with LED lights. So being mindful of your LED exposure, the blue light exposure is pretty significant. Again, especially as we start to go into this nighttime routine. So if you can start turning off the blue lights and putting red screens on, or wearing blue blockers when you're watching TV, that kind of stuff is going to help connect, again, especially if sleep's an issue. Sleep's an issue if you wake up tired in the morning. So that's the number one sign that your sleep is not restful and rejuvenative. And that's really important that you get that rejuvenative factor in it. Just staying in bed for 9 hours doesn't mean you're getting good sleep, because a lot of people have TVs in their bedroom. So that's another thing, to be able to create this atmosphere of sleep. Like, what are the things that represent sleep? A bed, really nice soft blankets, nice pillows, like really snuggly stuff. Like, I literally have a nest in my bed. I have pillows on this side, I have pillows on this side, I have a pillow underneath my head, and I've got what's called a nest. Everybody makes fun of my nest, but I sleep pretty good in my little nest in my bed. And so I would just recommend that you create a space in your room that really, really represents sleep, because anytime that it doesn't represent sleep, it's going to represent something else. So think of your kitchen. Okay, you've got your kitchen. You would put your bed in your kitchen, and you wouldn't bring your blender into your bedroom. I'm just saying, you don't put a TV in your bedroom either, because that's a form of entertainment. And the only entertainment that happens in a bedroom is sex. So keep it in the bedroom and let that place be a sanctuary for making love, having sex, and going to sleep. Creating these spaces for these very, again, primitive practices. Really, sleep and sex are very primitive, and being able to really create a sanctuary for that. All right, soak up the sunlight. So making sure that you're getting that sunlight exposure during the day. Vitamin D is so much more than just a vitamin. It pretty much contributes to every single function in our body, as does melatonin, and they work together very, very well. So we want to keep that daylight cycle connected with those two things. And now that the sun is getting up a little bit earlier, we have longer days, the sun's getting a little higher in the sky, we might start to get some of the vitamin D from the sun, but even the light from the sun is going to help us be able to sleep better at night. So getting outside, even if it's just for a couple walks, getting that initial walk in the morning is really key to connect with nature and to get that sunlight in. So our body goes, oh, our pineal gland goes, hey, yo, it's daylight time. Let's really start to amp up the system and get the energy flowing. And then at night, I often go for a walk at night too, because at night, then I connect with the night cycle and really start to wind myself down. This is why we don't want to do exercise at night. And I know a lot of people that exercise during this time of night, and your body, it goes into a sort of fight or flight response. Walking, not the same thing. Walking can be very neutralizing and really ground you, especially again, if it's in the evening and if you're enjoying nature and you're connecting with the sun setting, like it can give that really feeling of grounding. But not doing hardcore exercise. A little yoga, fine. Meditation, perfect. A little yoga nidra, perfect, to be able to wind down and connect. Foods that are rich in melatonin. So goji berries, tart cherries, walnuts are really good for melatonin, along with almonds, pineapple, tomatoes, bananas, oranges, and there's a bunch of other ones, but those are kind of the main ones to be able to, get foods that have it. And most foods do have like melatonin and vitamin D in it, because plants need that for energy too. Those are ones that just have the most. That's why when we do the golden milk, we recommend putting almonds in there, because almonds are melatonin or precursors to melatonin production. Taking a hot bath at night, so a bath or a shower to be able to, I always feel like it cleans off the day, cleans off the stress, recalibrates my system. Plus your body goes through a warm period and then your body has to cool back down again. And the nice thing about the cooling process is the cooling process tends to be grounding and helps us sleep better. Limiting your exposure to Wi-Fi and EMFs. So the electromagnetic field of our phones and of devices. I have some of my friends and teachers that actually put timers. I've got a timer now for mine. So my Wi-Fi goes off at a certain time, and really limiting the amount that you're exposed to, especially in your bedroom. If you have your phone as an alarm clock, I'd highly recommend turning it on airplane mode so it's not sending signals, so that it's not vibrating or beeping or blinging or making any noises while you sleep, along with sending transmissions. It's going to be interesting when we go to the satellites with the G5 networks and see what happens to everybody's sleep. Oh, wow. Anyway, we won't even get into that can of worms. But we want to make sure that our bodies, again, has as much of a sanctuary for sleep as it would for any other activity that we do in our life. Regulating your caffeine intake. So I am also a coffee drinker, so I do love my coffee, but making sure that you cut it off at a certain time. I would say if you can cut it off in the morning or no later than noon. Coffee has a half-life of about 7 hours. So if you do the math, that's cutting it a little close, especially if you're drinking any coffee or caffeine for that matter in the afternoon. So I'd say really cut it off at noon, no later, and minimal amount. Espresso has less caffeine than what black drip coffee does. Black drip coffee has much more caffeine. There's a lot of teas that have a lot of caffeine that we don't take into consideration. But if you're doing herbal teas, of course, they don't have caffeine in them. You can drink those pretty late unless it's got some sort of stimulant in it, which there are. But trying to keep that caffeine out of your afternoon so that your body can naturally start to produce melatonin and release cortisol and all of that kind of stuff. Meditation and prayer. So in the evening, in the morning also is a really great time to practice. But if you find that you need to start, detaching your mind or processing some of the stress from the day, journaling is also a really good thing to be able to do and practice at night, is to be able to get rid of the stuff that's on your mind. I often do a brain dump at night. So if I find that my brain is going or I can't wind down, a lot of times I paint at night too. So painting helps my mind to settle because it goes from my left brain of thinking to my right brain, which is creative and tends to be much more restful and less stimulating than what my left part of my brain is. But writing can also do that. Writing and journaling can help because that would be it'd be right brain because it's creative. It's more creative writing, but being able to dump some of that off. And then even at night, I'm finding when I'm doing a lot of production type stuff where I'm writing articles or I'm putting a lot of information on my website or I'm doing a lot of lectures like this, because even if I know this lecture inside out, upside down, been talking about it for a decade now, I still find new information. So I'm always looking for these little bits of new information and research that come out. So sometimes my brain starts to get really full and wound up. So what I do is before bed, I do my brain dump, and I do my business brain dump too. So if I've got things that I need, my to-do list, I get my to-do list and I just start making it so that I don't have to think about it. Then I don't have to worry about it through the night or the next morning because it's already been made. For those of you that have to actually go to work, like leave the house, go to work and have to get dressed up. If you want to get your practices in the morning, if you leave your stuff out or prepare it the night before, then you don't have to rush and worry about it in the morning. So really working on that day or that evening routine as much as you do your morning routine. It's really, really important. Now, a lot of times we forget about evening routine. Like we're so focused on the dietary, the morning routine, that we forget about the evening routine and really focus on, amping it up in the morning, but really grounding and settling into surrendering into our evenings. And then golden milk is also something really good. We did talk about that. Eating foods with tryptophan in it. So tryptophan is a precursor for melatonin. Foods like garbanzo beans is the number one. So garbanzo beans in the evening, Highly recommend them. Chickpeas, same thing. Spirulina, soybeans, cottage cheese, pumpkin seeds, turkey and chicken, tofu, watermelon seeds. I don't know how many watermelons. I swallowed a lot of watermelon seeds in my life. I've never found myself doing one. Anyway, peanuts, yogurt, almonds, of course. But garbanzo beans are pretty significant because they offer really great protein, but it's really easy to digest. So if there's anything you're going to add to your diet, I'd recommend garbanzo beans. And that's what would be in like hummus and stuff like that. But there's lots of ways to eat garbanzo beans. Okay, so I talked about a lot of different things. There's a lot of information there, and I just have to say, I mean, get your sleep. And of course, I'm in the process of making a lot of different programs around these topics because I'm starting to find more and more people that are having pretty severe issues with digestion. And there's so much digestion and sleep that there's just so much misinformation out there. And I follow this, like this is my system of practice. And Western research is proving that that's very, very true, that the circadian clock is extremely important. In Western medicine, that's the new science, is circadian science. And, Ayurveda has been talking about it for 5,000 years. So we've got this one covered. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me. My information is on whenshifthappens.org. I have all of my links to everything on there, my link tree and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, you can shoot me any questions that you have or any concerns. Otherwise,